Things to consider. What is rigor and what does it look like in a classroom? Blackburn describes true rigor is creating an environment in which each student is expected to learn at high levels, each student is supported so he or she can learn at these high levels, and each student demonstrates learning at these high levels. So let's talk a minute about how our classrooms have changed and how rigor will appear differently depending on which era or time period that you're actually teaching it. So in the 80s, students would sit at desks, they would have the green chalkboards with lots of visuals of paper, they'd have books and manipulatives on their desks that they've created. There's possibly even a laminator, projector, showing notes and things like that, possibly a computer down here in the classroom, which was very rare. The media center or library may have a few to use. We see cell phones in the 90s being emerged from the bag telephones all the way down to the flip phones. We have data storage on floppy disks to CDs and how that's changed to a classroom today and the resources that are available where students have their own tablets or specific device that they use, whether it's an iPod, a cell phone, a computer, possibly a smart board by the teacher. Um, Data storage is now available either in USBs or even online where it's free cloud storage through Google Drive. Cell phones have rapidly changed in the amount of technology that they can process and handle. Students can actually collaborate now in a live working space with students across the city walls or even country or states. It is undefined in terms of collaboration that is available to students. So when we think about rigor and what it is, it's really critical thinking. It was those high levels of thinking. So when we define critical thinking, it's an informed decision-making process. It's thinking about thinking and how do we improve it. So you have to be actively analyzing and synthesizing and evaluating a specific process. It has a product of education, it is training and practice, and it's really a mental habit and power. And the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are now working as if I did not exist. And that really is the true sense of rigor, is when a teacher can walk away from his or her classroom and the students are still highly engaged in their task and what they're learning about and their content. And so that's what Maria Montessori, her quote, highly defines critical thinking. On the right side of this slide, you'll see why students and sometimes teachers don't think critically. So these are some potential barriers that limit or put restrictions on critical thinking. Maybe there's just too many facts being thrown out at one time, or there's too little conceptualizing. Maybe it's so much memorizing, rote memory, that there is little thinking that even has to occur, so students are not engaged. Students are trained not to think. Maybe they're just trained to sit there and behave and listen to what is being taught to them without little participation required. And maybe life comes at them fast. Maybe they have home situations or life situations that they are so engaged with in their minds that learning, really, really can't occur until they deal with those. And even as a teacher, we have, sometimes you're in life situations that are causing you to not be able to think as clearly as well. Uh, as a classroom teacher, though, when we consider rigor, we have to take action. And these four areas, content, process, product, and environment, are really the main cores that need to be considered when you're thinking about raising rigor in your classroom. So we're going to talk about how does this look. At the bottom, you'll see Edutopia wrote an article, Raising Rigor in Your Classroom. This is a fantastic article that goes into a little bit more depth of each of these four bullet points that I'm going to highlight for just a moment. For content, when we think about content and being really rigorous, The standards are hard. They're new to students, and a lot of them haven't gone into this curriculum as deep as you have. So it needs to be an approach that really engages them. So that is inquiry-based, that is project-based, that is really allowing them to dig deeper through hands-on, processes, allowing them to work collaboratively, to communicate, and to produce a product. Sometimes that may be a lab, sometimes that may be a project. Sometimes they come up with their own products. Allowing creativity to be fostered in your classroom is fantastic. And really the environment of rigor in your classroom is defined by you. As a classroom teacher, you are the person who is solely responsible for fostering and really igniting this curiosity that will develop, true rigorous students. It was always my aim as a teacher to have students initiate conversations that were really modeling, the high level of Bloom's taxonomy or revised Bloom's taxonomy, really asking those questions without being prompted from me. And we know that as teachers, we're really surrounded by opportunities. So we're going to talk about 5 things that, these opportunities that we have, sometimes we miss or sometimes we respond to in certain ways that diminish the ability of rigor to really take place. So if you're a classroom teacher and you are constantly, shushing your students and you're asking them to be quiet, this begins to be a diminisher of rigor when students aren't able to talk and discuss. And really by making them or requiring them to be quiet is forcing them to be, disengaged from the content, disengaged from the classroom, and ultimately winds up being a result of behavior problems in the class. Students also get a mentality that they're maybe afraid to ask questions. So if you have been ridiculing them for answering or for talking, then they're going to develop this sense of fear in asking questions, which is opposite of the intended goal that you had when you were keeping them quiet. Another opportunity for rigor is when students are actually working by themselves or in groups. You could travel to groups and ask questions for clarification. You can even, ask them another question to really provoke the thought, get them started. So like I said before, you are the leader and facilitator of this environment. If you are showing them how to think and encouraging them in the thoughts that they are having, this is going to help build this. Excuse me. The third thing is having hands-on activities. Students cannot sit still. We're in an age where students are active, they're busy. Our society is filled with things that are constantly going. So if you're having them sit still and quiet, this is not being conducive to who they are as individuals, and it's going to be a defeating purpose. So thinking about rigorous activities, things that are going to get them to think. Allow them to be able to be creative. Avoid simple art projects. These are time wasters and often lack true rigor when they are not aligned with the standards. Should be clear in your expectations of what you want the product to look like. Rubrics or outlines are really helpful at this process, and again, encourage creativity. Allow them to think outside the box and reward this as much as possible. Being an innovator is something that is dire and necessary to survive in the 21st century. When they're competing for a job, when they get out of college, they're going to have to be innovators in their interview process. What stands alone or difference between them and another person with the same skill set? They have to be able to be this way. So harness their curiosity is another way to allow rigor into the classroom. Allow them to ask questions. You can design an entire unit around what they're curious about, and they will be, more engaged in the concepts because it's something that they want to learn. And so finally, hopefully this has brought you to a conclusion of how you can foster creativity in your classroom and some of the things that kind of just diminish it. So I hope that these are some things that for you to consider when you're planning. Thank you for listening, as always.